What's up? Balance out the lighting here a little bit. This is an unexpected little soiree here. We'll see how it goes. If you got good audio, just drop ones. Drop ones. Drop a one. Don't expect a whole lot of politics out of me tonight. The politics will be coming tomorrow night. All of the info drops that have been going on over the last 12 hours, 14 hours, that something that Glenn and I are preparing to address on a Tuesday night stream. So thank you. We got a lot of ones. We got a lot of ones. That's good. Put this up here. Make sure we get the Dixie lights up there. There they are. Excellent audio. That I never get. I never get that, Leah. I always get some kind of constructive criticism. So let's try to move that up and out. There we go. Okay. Why did I jump on? Because I noticed at the end of DeFango's scope, there seemed to be a concerted effort from someone or an account followers at large that decided to just kind of like, you know, dive in and make comments that were not really necessary to make. And it just seems like that this is the beginning of something that has already happened 1,000 times. We'd like to move past it. I think that's something that we've been talking about over the last couple of weeks through different groups of people. I think that's why Dustin Nemos actually kind of relented and went on to talk with DeFango. I think other people. I think going back a month ago, Unirock relented, and even if it was 5:30 in the morning, decided to come on and try to explain a little bit of his point of view. I think there's the line in the sand, though. There is a line in the sand where some of us can be allies, some of us can be friends, and some of us are going to be forced to be enemies. And I'm seeing that drawing out into the YouTube world, out from Twitter. I want to let you know where I stand as of tonight. I, like a lot of you that has been following me for a long time, I learned about the Revenge of the Cis guys because they were making fun of Dilly Spoon Man. I mean, easy target. I get it. There were some folks in our family that really enjoyed it. Glenn kind of hung around and paid a little bit more attention and caught some stuff that was not kosher, if you want to allow me to use that word. And there's just a few things we can't suffer. As far as my personal experience, as far as like Glenn, as far as like Ginger, as far as like the MAGA coalition and the fam that has been a part of it, it's just that kind of stuff. It goes past the ha ha funny. I mean, I guess we're all going to be called something, soy boys, or there'll be some type of a derision. And I won't be on too long, Leah. Don't worry about it. I just wanted to point out that while DeFango made an excellent point tonight, like if somebody who's a big follower or a good supporter of my material with Glenn comes in and causes trouble in a particular scope or broadcast for DeFango, I don't think there's going to be any hesitation to clear the road on that. So that's right. Leah's up in the Great Northwest. So you'll have a good go to bed and listen to a replay. Yeah, I picked up on that, Sherry, a little bit. And what we want to do is we want to draw the line. If you have, if you have a reason to do what was done, which is like the old eggplant trick in Periscope world, where you just start bombing somebody's YouTube, and you can't really get away with trying to make the complaints and trying to get a channel strike on that, because if you do that, then it's going to be a complete and utter war, and you won't win it. So I think what it more or less turns into is like glorified trolling. And for an extemporaneous guy, stream of consciousness guy like DeFango is, I can understand that that's probably a pretty annoying thing to deal with. I think it would be for anybody, and I think we kind of took it easy on Uni Rock. And if these people are attributed to Uni Rock, or nay, maybe Revenge of the Sis, or Mersh in particular, I don't know. I'm not going to make any proclamations on that, because I don't know. We're still kind of new to this world of YouTube, and it's a disturbing world. It's of cat fights and anger and pettiness. But we want to be very clear. I want to be very clear. I'm not going to try to speak for Glenn. I'm not going to try to speak for Ginger right now. But I think you can cross a line in the sand with us, because you keep lumping us in a repetitive nature with DeFango or with somebody else. You got to watch out, because what you're doing is you're forging a relationship like that that's not going to cause us any consternation about being in that relationship. So the fact of the matter is you take somebody like DeFango. He has been loyal. He has been honest, open, forthright. You take somebody like Uni, who we tried to work with a little bit, and we get a lot of fence sitting and the kind of like ass chafing behavior on a fence. I understand that too. I understand the stress of these people who live off of making sure that their big sub channels don't get demonetized or strikes, and it just seems like my naivete might be showing here, but it seems like my debutante opinion about the YouTube world would be that we're already at the precipice of a mutually assured destruction, because once you get into striking each other's channels, you're going to end up in oblivion. And the only people that are really going to be happy with oblivion, as far as conservative voices being shut down, is going to be Google, and YouTube. They're going to be happy because we do that. So I'm enjoying our newfound status here. I'm enjoying that I can do this now on a phone, instead of breaking out the Mac. But it brought a lot of attention to me tonight. Just trying to watch a scope where I don't think he was being too inflammatory or incendiary or anything like that. I think it probably sets a benchmark that there's going to be people that come after us. And then you have to realize that if Glenn is putting considerable resources into the YouTube channel for the MAGA Coalition, he is not going to simply allow people to randomly strike us or attempt to, report us. That's something he's not going to allow to occur. He will push back on a lot of fronts and make sure that we're represented with the truth on that. So I just want to make sure that people don't declare the wrong war. Don't even if you think it's a right war, don't do a Pearl Harbor against someone like us, because it's just not worth it. And maybe by extension, it's not worth harassing somebody like DeFango. Maybe it's just not. Maybe, like we just found out on Twitter this week, maybe it's not worth harassing JB over like parsing his words about what he really meant. I think that's kind of the where we come from right now. Where a lot of people do, Sharon. A lot of people suffered through the Nemo's interview, but I get what was going on there. I mean, I get what both parties were trying to achieve. I think Nemos was trying to get a foothold into the universe of the anti-Q, to separate himself from the blatant on fire and fuego grifters like Joe M. like in the Matrix, Shady Groove, whatever. I mean, they've got themselves some real problem children over there. So I can see that maybe Dustin Nemos is trying to change his feathers a little bit, but that's not going to work for like the MAGA coalition. But it might work a little bit for some people that have been following YouTube for a while, and for the group of people that follow Defango in particular. And it's not as if we just follow Defango. I follow Defango. I follow Unirock. I may not watch as much of their stuff as I do some other people. I know that this is going to sound prohibitive in a way or punitive in a way, but it's not really meant to be that way. I'm just saying that we should probably dial it back a little bit because YouTube is already all hands on deck looking to demonetize, not only demonetize, but just completely strike channels. And if we, meaning people that want to work on these campaigns moving forward, particularly the presidential, we're going to take it very seriously if you're going to try to strike out another channel that is in some way working in concert with getting the president reelected. And that's the kind of stuff that JB takes very seriously. That's the kind of stuff I take seriously. It's the kind of stuff Glenn takes seriously. It's also the kind of stuff like Ginger and Doug Stewart take seriously. Let's just dial it back a little bit because I get the feeling that you don't have to care that much about politics as much as we do, but we are more than your garden variety political action committee that just kind of like sits back and allows this kind of stuff to go. So we're going to be more proactive in protecting our own. I hope that doesn't sound threatening, but it honestly feels like we're speaking like a mafioso La Cosa Nostra type of attitude. But it's not as if we're being paid or anybody else is being paid. This is built on loyalty. It's built on trust. It's built on faculty. It's built on capability. Those types of relationships are what are going to move forward quickly in the YouTube community from here until 2020. It's the drama laden bullshit that I think is probably going to get wiped out first. And I agree, Nikki. There are a lot of people that come in here and anything they want to do is just the opposite of participating in drama. Unfortunately, a lot of the content providers can't help but subscribe to drama, and I'm not absolving Manny from any of that in particular. But you know, the credibility angles not looking real good right now as far as some of the YouTubers out there. We've got some real shitty information. It's not helpful. It's incendiary. It's got Moabs that never come. It's got stealing people's information and research and trying to pass it off on your own, and it's wrong. That kind of stuff is I'm going to be very cognizant about who I follow and who I decide to share certain streams about. I think we can do better. What I saw tonight was a little bit disturbing because these people essentially tried to shut down the end of Defango's broadcast. And you did so by overtaxing the moderators, and you did so by getting all these messages deleted. And I'm not really a big fan of that. If you have disagreements, I don't think you'll be shut down in the conversation if you pose them in a very respectful way. I just think when you go too far and make jokes about people's religion or even like body size, looks, or anything like that, I think you're pushing the gamut a little bit, and I think we can do better than that. I mean, if we're gonna have intellectual discourse and argue with each other, I think we should probably do it in a way where we're going to argue with each other in a way the words are not infantile, and we actually can insult each other in a pretty funny way. The lost art of trolling needs to return. Everybody's got to get off this real personal kick by just going after people's looks or their religion or their race or their orientation. I think that's just dumb. I think that's like 10 years ago. I think if anything, we can be funnier about our disagreements. So yeah, that's a good question, Doug. I mean, clearly, I don't know the group of people that DeFango probably knows the names and the accounts. Sherry probably knows the names and the accounts. I don't know. I rarely even got a chance to see the message, but it was clearly one group of people that decided to descend into DeFango's cast and kill it, which is kind of what we're trying to get away from. So, I mean, if it's a Schoenberger gang, that's a different issue altogether. Unless, unless it becomes quite apparent that Uni is working in some type of complicit or tacit way with Schoenberger's attacks, and we can actually see that because Uni will he'll dial down and act innocent and do his own stream while he knows people are attacking in Defango. So I've noticed that. So I'm not going to say maybe Defango hasn't done the same shit to him at one point. I'm just saying we're not the new sheriff in town by any means, but we are what we consider referee types, intermediaries. And so far, I found Defango to be a much more honest broker in this whole thing than certainly Thomas Schoenberger, and by far Schoenberger, but then certainly lately then Defang or Unirock as well. So it's just like trying to be a referee and calling balls and strikes. It's not easy. But I do know I don't like seeing that deluge of people just dropping in here. I mean, people can say whatever they want on mine. I really don't give a shit. I don't even know if Glenn is in here. He'll take care of it if he wants to. It's it's disturbing to hear a lot of the stuff that we occasionally have to put out when we have people who want to attack somebody based on race, creed, orientation, whatever. As we heard some disturbing audio tonight, it's not as if Mersch is not a funny or capable person. He is just on the wrong side of history at the wrong time, and his language is the invective is wrong for the war that we are currently trying to survive. And there are a lot of us that could be swept away very easily in a corollary fashion because of the language that he's using, and he needs to be more respectful of that, I think. And if you do want to be funny in that regard, just film yourself, upload it on to some other device or BitChute or something, and laugh or whatever it is, because it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense to the people that followed us for a long time, that jumped in and started following these other people. So I mean, vegan. It's a kind of a long story. It's the Revenge of the Cis guys. One in particular that a lot of our fam watched make fun of Dilly, and it was funny. It was funny. I mean, everybody can agree that what they did was very funny on Dilly. Dilly is a character. He's a short, fat, white kid. He's the absolute middle of the road majority punching bag that you can get away with, and no one's gonna bother you. It's when you start calling out people for their religion, for their appearances, or their orientation. That's when YouTube's just gonna start lumping us all together. Because if Revenge of the Cis has a 30% cross pollination, if you will, of viewership that we do for some reason, or Defango does for some reason, you and everybody else out there know that that's going to be tied into an algorithm, and that we're going to get weighted against that. Our strikes are going to be weighted against, the crossover audience of our broadcast. So it sucks, but that's exactly how YouTube is monitoring all this stuff, and it just doesn't help us, particularly when we have a lot of real good, innocent MAGA Coalition fam that thinks it's funny to go in and hear about the Dilly thing, but then they kind of tune in and start sharing the actual podcast, which is generally littered with Nazi-esque sentiments particularly towards Jews, and I've heard the N word spoken rather liberally for people that claim to be 100% Irish on one side or another. So I'm not calling them out in general, but even if I was, I'm not concerned about that. I'm really not. I think that that would be a discussion I'm willing to have, like a grown man with them. And if I start getting dive bomb kamikaze moths flapping their little wings in our chats, and we got to start blocking and taking care of it, we're going to check each profile. We're going to see whether profiles line up. We're going to see who those channels, those profiles follow, and we're going to drag them right back into your neck of the woods, and then that's how we're going to handle the situation. But what we're not here to do is start a strike war on anybody. And I highly suggest that you don't start a strike war on us because that can be demonstrably proven false. And depending on how you want to approach that stuff, that could be it could be ugly. So, yeah, free speech or no, I'm cool with it. I'm cool with it. Here's the thing about free speech. Free speech allows Merch to go and make these Jewish jokes all he wants. I understand DeFango's point about it not being a government platform. It's not regulated currently by the FCC, so it's not technically something that you can violate free speech on. However, I understand the libertarian notion of what free speech is and that Merch should be able to say whatever he wants about Jews, and if you don't like it, you can just turn it off. I get that. Here's the problem with it. Twofold problem with it. One, again, I think it's going to suck in inadvertent people from our normie side that just kind of get roped into there, and they're going to do profile cross algorithm checks where they're going to see that if 25% of the people that watch us are watching them, then they're going to be locked in more if there's a strike thrown our way based on maybe insensitive language. Glenn has been known to occasionally be insensitive with his language. But the primary part of that whole thing is just that the free speech ends at my nose and my ears. And I don't have to listen to them. That's true. But they don't have to come into my broadcast, my streams, and they certainly don't have to go into DeFango's stream. They do not have to just kind of cause a lot of problems with the moderators. That stuff is juvenile. I think we should be past that. I like to think that that's Periscope behavior. I don't want to see that stuff happen on YouTube. I mean, YouTube is essentially a place where if you mind your P's and Q's, generally speak to the audience that you are, trying to get in there, everything's going to be okay. It's when we have these crossovers and we just start getting into these little circular firing squads where it's never going to work out for anybody. It's really, 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 really going to be difficult to try to kill another person's channel and then not have that happen to you. I mean, you got a better chance than Periscope, but YouTube, totally different deal. And I think that I'm not in the censorship either. I'm not in the censorship, but if DeFango is offended, or I'm defended, or offended, or defending whatever, anybody's speech, that's my business on my podcast. If you want to come in and come in like kamikazes and just blow up because you disagree with the fact that I disagree with you, that's not, in my mind, free speech. Now you're interfering with my ability to speak. So when those people, Schoenberger people or not, decided that they were going to attack the last portion of DeFango's stream, they were in fact usurping his ability as an American to speak out, even though the TOS will define it, not the Constitution. So that whole thing, that matters to me. That matters to me because I'm not going to come into those programs and listen to that and trash these guys for it there. I will, like DeFango did, I will play a clip that doesn't go too far, that I could get copyright struck on it. I would just say, listen, I disagree with the sentiments of this person. totally their choice to come back and attack my channel then, because there's a far cry between DeFango playing 30 seconds of merch speaking about Jews and DeFango taking that video and trying to get his channel struck or demonetized or whatever like that. There's a far cry between those two things. So we need to keep balance in this whole thing. So I don't think anybody here is anti free speech. I don't think anybody at 3 o'clock in the morning on the East Coast on YouTube is going to come out and say can't happen. We want everybody to shut up. The point is, let them talk on their platform. The chances are they're going to be reported by people from, you know, some other defamation league or some other type of right wing watch operation or things like that. But when we start policing our own, we should do it in video form within the context of our own broadcast, much like DeFango did tonight. That's how you police your own. I mean, that's how you get your voice out and say, I disagree with this. And then they have a choice to rebut the whole thing and do a rejoinder. We don't have to attack each other's stream. And we don't have to try to report each other or strike each other's channels. I think we got to come to a gentleman's agreement, much like the old time mafioso guys. They didn't all get along, but you don't want a war. A war is no good. A war only is good for Media Matters. A war is only good for the YouTube, Google immigrants that want to block us all from saying what we really want to say. And we're going to make it easy for them. And I don't want to make it easy for them. Thank you, David. So you agree at least with $1 of my sentiment. That's okay. I like that. It's if that's their MO, then that's on them. That's on them. I mean, as a relative neophyte on this platform, the last thing I'm going to do is engage in a life or death struggle with somebody's channel. It's not my thing. So I can't lecture anybody like DeFango or even Unirock because they've had their own battles over the years or year. And I think there's insidious little elements like Thomas Schoenberger that are always the burr in the saddle that are going to constantly keep irritating somebody's ass, and it's gonna flare up. So I don't know, Slider. It's totally well. We used to do it on Periscope, right? We used to have those kind of wars. Thanks, Sharon. I think a lot of the old school Periscopers and some of the people that have been following me for a long time probably understand more what I'm saying than the YouTube crowd. Probably thinks I'm just a sanctimonious, debutante that really doesn't know he fell off the back of a turnip truck in a dress. So I understand where you're coming from like that. So DeFango's putting big money up, $2 too. I appreciate that. Yeah, Jen, but this is like a different mess because it's a different subset of people, and I want to get it right. I just want to get it right. I think the people that just jump on me all the time and they're like, "You and Glenn and Ginger, you're like you're DeFango defenders. You're Gabe Hoffman defenders. You're blah 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 blah." They've got this whole lineup of people that they assume if you're conversing with them in any way, shape, or form, you're on one side or the other. I can tell you, there's a lot of people we work with that are all over the freaking spectrum, and I'm happy about that because we can keep an eye on a lot of different things from that side of the you know from that side of the spectrum. But and yeah, I mean that part of the conversation about Alex Jones does drive up a lot of different narratives as well, and I think that's a lot of this has been borne out by the Q phenomenon. I am Sherry, just still trying to figure out the Schoenberger guy, what he's about. Seems to be pervasive. I would say ubiquitous, but pervasive actually has a negative connotation to it, so that's the word I'm going to use. If he has the balls with temerity to, reach out and try to talk to us in an actual way, I don't think that's something we would shy away from, if only for the reason of trying to understand what his goals are. But I don't think that that's going to happen. I think he's attempted to do so in a cursory fashion. It doesn't work out. We don't fit the psychological profile of people that he can manipulate. So I am forced to just deal with the fallout of the stories from all of you who have experienced this type of thing. And he seems to be a guy who lives and dies by the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And not only that, but I believe he actually seeks to, recruit the enemy of his current enemies, and then eventually they become his enemies too. So it's just like a repetitive cycle that's just toxic and dangerous. So yeah, I think you're right, Jen. I think we're in a different set of circumstances, but nonetheless, I don't want to be bullied or in any way stalked or anything like that. So yeah, we've been through it. Slider, we've been through that stuff with Vandersteel, but she's weak, of course. So I don't want to carry over our Periscope drama too much into YouTube world. But I did want to say that I was disappointed because I was listening to the end of the Defango broadcast, and I was seeing this onslaught, and it really took me back. For some of my old school followers will remember when Nick DeCenzo's had the old eggplant bomb done on him, and that was I can't remember who that guy is, but he's still on Periscope with all kinds of weird accounts. But yeah, he bombed him out, and he got freaked out because there was eggplants all over. He couldn't block them all, and I'm not, DeFango can handle himself, but I'm trying to follow not only his conversation, I like to follow the chat when I'm watching DeFango. So I'm thinking, is this going to be a norm? I hope not. I hope this is like a one-time flare-up of whatever, but it's not something I don't want to tolerate. I don't want to tolerate that. And if you come into our stuff, like tomorrow night, if we go, I think we'll be on tomorrow night. We've got a lot of stuff, a lot of stuff that phone ringing off the hook, all kinds of crazy stuff. But if you come after my broadcast when Glenn and I are on, I mean, we will not block you. What we will do is we will click your profiles, we will gather your profiles, we will silo them, and we will put them to research to see what your intentions are and why and who you're connected to. And that sounds kind of threatening, but it's actually not, because you're coming into our broadcast and making comments that we deem to be inappropriate or slanderous, and then we can very easily just run your stuff through 6 different programs to find out every Facebook, MySpace, Twitter account you've ever had. And I think that's probably why we're a little bit different than the other people. We're going to do that, and a lot of people feel that way. Lone Cicada, I mean, I've heard you say that several times in the DM room, and I believe you. It seems like you have the conviction to say that, the courage of your conviction. I don't think a lot of people can really be bothered to the extent it used to be. So thank you. I always struggle with that name, Lyala 8. Instantly, I turn into a moron when yeah. So Larissa is much easier to say. Love Larissa is a great name. So, but anyway, my point simply being is, if I'm on tomorrow night and they dive bomb us like they did at the end of the Defangoscope, it's going to be a different result. And so, if it's Schoenberger, you're counting on us not knowing who you're 2 moves away from. that you're counting on us not knowing who you're really trying to protect and who you're throwing into the fire. And I would not make that bet with us. I think we're going to be playing the same game, and we're going to be on the same side of the chessboard as you. And if it's some of the merch people that are upset, listen, we have friends on both sides of this whole thing. I get it. I'm more than happy to, do the old Irish cyber fisticuffs. I think it will play that game, but I damn sure will be disappointed if I tune in to a dank memes or something with Defango, and I have to deal with this moth to a flame bullshit activity. So I don't know. Buddy Hackett and Don Rickles. I wouldn't choose one or the other. Obviously, two of my favorites, but I would think Don Rickles would be alive with the cockroaches after the nuclear holocaust, until he met his natural demise. So I'm a big Don Rickles fan. So yeah, yeah, fair point. Fair point. Fair point. No, but there's no doubt that the political correctness is off the chain, it's off the hook. So yeah, I think even George Carlin would have a difficult time now, even with profanity back in comedy the way it is. I think George Carlin's ability to go to both sides of the political spectrum for his comedy would not play over as well. So I'm not going to stay on here very long. It's already 3:20. I got to be up. I got to be up with the girls in about 4 hours. So I did want to make one last point. I'll make it again tomorrow. Deeply, deeply offended by the 180 made by Brian Cates Draw and Strike with his GoFundMe effort. I think it's a complete height of hypocrisy. Not only for the fact that he's always chided others for having a Patreon or something like that. He comes up with horrible, horrible, horrible leads and threads and stories, and none of it makes sense, and it never pans out. And he doesn't come up with good content. That bothers me. And then, of course, he's openly slandered multiple times my entity, my corporate entity, my political action committee, with zero evidence. And when we tried to present the evidence to him that he was in fact wrong, he would not acknowledge the receipt of it. And now he wants to raise $25,000, and he's already up to like $15,000. I'll leave it up to you guys if that's just something that you like to see. If not, if you're in the game of irony, if you're in the game of showing them what's up, you check out my pinned tweet. I put up my own GoFundMe, except this time I put my story in there about who I am and why I've never had a GoFundMe before, but also all the experience that I brought to the table prior to the last 2.5 years, simply because writing a sad missive, ruminating openly on the fact that you deliver newspapers and you have some kind of blood pressure condition. I've got high blood pressure. I'm 60% deaf. I don't, worry about that as far as encumbering me on how to get forward in life. And I think it's sad, and I think it's sick, and I think it's exactly what Bill Mitchell does constantly, and I'm tired of watching it. And I want a bunch of people to give 5, 10, 15 bucks to my GoFundMe, and I think that would go to a good cause, i.e., not into my pocket, but it'll be enough to show them, ironically, that we mock them. We mock them and their stories, their sob stories. Everybody's Tiny fucking Tim these days. Everybody's got a tin fucking can. Nobody can fucking work. Let me tell you why most of these guys can't work. Most of these guys can't work because they have criminal fucking records as long as your sleeve. Most of these guys can't get hired in anything but a minimum wage job. So what they do is they grift They grift over the internet. And when you get somebody like myself who actually is getting professional damage done to him by being this closely associated with not only Twitter but with Trump, my earning potential has actually decreased over the last 2 years. Even if I were to go back into state government or consulting where I was, I would probably have to go in at a lower level because of all the heat that's come down from this whole thing. So I'm very offended with this whole thing. I think it's just ridiculous. I think it's the ultimate hypocrisy, and it reminds me really quickly before we go. It reminds me that there were always politicians in Pennsylvania that you had to serve 3 full terms, which was 6 years in order to get your qualify for your pension, and none of them after the great pay raise debacle in '05, none of them would sign up for the pension because they didn't have to, because all they had to do was sign after they lost or retired, and they all took the pension. Same thing with per diems. They would all tell their constituents when they ran for office, I didn't take any per diems. Yeah, they turned them all in at the very end of the day when they left on the last day. So that's kind of what's happening on the Brian Cates, Tracy Beans, Bill Mitchell front, and it's guys like me that are just stuck behind the lines, and they are laughing all the way to the bank. So I don't necessarily want that money that way. What I want is comments. I mean, a dollar comment saying, thanks for not being an asshole. Thanks for not being a grifter like these guys. And I don't even need a thanks. I would just say that I've been doing this for 2.5 fucking years, and I never ask anybody for $24,000 for quitting a paper route. And until we make a point of mocking them, until somebody stands up and says enough, it's just going to continue. So I'm going to get ripped on. They're going to be like, oh, you're just trying to make some money too. No, that's not really it. That's not really what's going on. I'm making a point, and I'm putting my little Irish manhood into a hornet's nest to make it. But I'm going to do it because, frankly, this just cannot keep happening because they are not providing actual information that should be consumed by anyone if they were. That includes Tracy Beans, that includes Brian Cates, that includes Bill Mitchell, that includes a lot of the Q people, obviously. They are not producing anything that even closely resembles what the hell's going on. Matter of fact, it's so obtuse, if not the opposite, like knowingly, willfully ignorant and choosing not to accept to report the truth because it's not exciting enough. Those are my systemic issues with it across the board. So I don't want anybody to think that I was just being a hoity-toity on that. But I really do. I put $10,000 there. I would expect that we'll make $10,000 on that, and that'll be a point to Brian Cates. It'll be a point to Bill Mitchell. It'll be a point to a lot of people. That it's not going to take a ton of effort to get 500 people to give $5, to something like that over the efforts of what myself and some other people that I've been working with in this whole age of Dustin Nemos printing out his so-called his spreadsheets of expenses. I don't have researchers. I don't have videographers. I don't have any of that bullshit. I'll tell you what I do is I sleep no more generally than 3 hours at a time so that I don't miss anything that's going on. And I constantly am researching what I'm getting back from people that I trust. And when I'm not doing that, I'm researching scammers, grifters, liars, losers, and LARPers, and I'm pulling up their criminal records, and I'm pulling up who they really are if they're trying to remain anonymous and take money from people. It's not going to be. I'm not going to allow it to stand. So I am a lonely, lonely soldier in this fight, as far as talking about the money front. Everybody else is, you know, situated where they don't have to worry about that whole front. But I do. I mean, I do have to make that point. Glenn's independently wealthy. Ginger does very well for herself. Neither one of them have, two young kids, the family situation that I do. They are rock solid people with rock solid backgrounds. You cannot dox them. Their entire life is public. I am the same way. So I think it's my job to stand up and say, enough, enough, enough. You have high blood pressure because you literally sit around and eat pizza and watch porn with your brother all night, Brian. Okay? I'm sorry if that's not a nice thing to say, but it's the truth. Okay? It's the truth. So I like Ginger. Everybody likes Ginger. She's a remarkable person. She is. She's an inspiration. That's all I can say. Ginger's an inspiration to not only us in the coalition, but to a lot of other people. And she is the original queen of the Q Slayers. And it's almost slayed, ladies and gentlemen. There's not much left of Q. Haven't heard from Q in quite a long time, and I don't expect to hear from them anytime soon because they're paralyzed. They don't know what's going on. They don't know what to say. Big news tomorrow night. Big reporting that I have on both Christopher Steele through the Durham investigation, and I have a Mike Flynn breaking news story that we're going to do maybe tomorrow if I can get the rest of the facts on it. But this is going to be the stuff that kind of is going to get around real quick, because we're going to be talking about some explosive details that are going to accompany declassification. So from here to that end, let's try to remain somewhat civil on YouTube. And if you get a reputation as somebody who takes cheap shot strikes or community guideline complaints, and you get that reputation, even if you're doing it to somebody you think is our enemy, we will be wary of allowing you anywhere near our inner circle because we know that that's your propensity. And if you have the proclivity to do that, you might do that to us. So be very careful, even when you're very angry with somebody. If they do a copyright violation, then by all means put it in. Community guideline complaints. I think YouTube is just going to start piling these things up as an excuse to start wiping out the channels that aren't Nazis and don't say anti-Semitic things. So that is just my tiny little contribution thus far to the YouTube community. So I appreciate everybody tuning in for my half an hour here. If it wasn't for that last minute bombing of all the commentary in DeFango's stream, I would not be on. So my hope is that we will do what will become a regular Tuesday broadcast tomorrow night. That's the idea that Glenn and I have. It will be slightly earlier for all you East Coasters. We're looking at 10 o'clock, so you should be happy about that. So much stuff going on. Everybody, please wish Leah a safe flight back to Florida, which I'm sure she'll have in a couple hours. And be prepared to see me again tomorrow night, tonight, actually, around 10 o'clock with Glenn. So good to see you all. Thanks for stopping in. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Serious Cat. Always appreciate all the super chat love. It goes right to our efforts with the coalition. Love it. Don't forget to stop by my Twitter account. Share my pinned tweet. If you don't want to donate, I get it, but just share it out there because it's going to humiliate the people begging for money. So that's all I got. Now, all I have to do at this point is end the YouTube mobile